watching World Championship Wreckage, brought to you by Rivet City Radio and presented on the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Today's episode, Kanyon, with a special guest. Will you introduce him, DadHat?
The Americream Dream, HuskyRhodes, baby. Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of World Championship Wreckage here on our brand new home, the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Joined with me every week, my bearded brother, the Will Gray from, I'm pointing in the wrong damn direction, the Will Gray from Box Spots and Chair Shots over on Rivet City Radio, and my buddy that I have known for a long time, join us in the guest chair tonight, the sleeveless wonder himself, but of course this time he's wearing sleeves for once, the host of the Wrecking Crew podcast, my buddy, the HuskyRhodes. What's going on, guys? Thank you for joining us. We got a fun topic tonight. We're going to be talking about, as you guys know, because you guys know me a little more personally, somebody that means a whole lot to me in my personal life, and that's going to be Mr. Chris Kanyon.
Who better?
Who better? Nobody. I will go on record first off here and say that Chris Kanyon is in my number 2 spot for the person who never held a world championship. Scott Hall's number 1. Chris Kanyon's number 2.
Yeah.
Kurt Hennig is number 3, but he did in other like AWA, but that's beyond the point.
Right.
But Chris Kanyon. So yeah, Will, for you, what's your first Chris Kanyon memory? When do you remember seeing him and him being on your radar?
You know me, I'm the history buff in the class. So when I think Chris Kanyon, I always go to that mid 90s stuff. A lot, like I told you guys before we hit the record button, a lot of my notes start in that mid 90s, 95, 96, 97 range.
Mm-hmm.
He's in my brain, like you said, he's that guy. If you think of the quintessential over mid-card champion, Chris Kanyon was kind of that guy. If you think of somebody who could be in the main event, he was one of those people, but he was also always there. He was never your bathroom break match. And he was just a hell of a worker. When you talk about a guy who was just pure in the ring, but in the squared circle, could just go, it was Chris Kanyon.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Husky, what about you? When do you remember Chris Kanyon kind of popping into your world and being like, you're paying attention to this guy now?
Well, kind of around the same time frame, that like mid 90s era. Because I remember I was like, 9, 10 years old. So I was a huge Glacier mark.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mortal Kombat was the craze at the time. So to see like basically Sub-Zero every Monday on TV, like the entrance was sick.
The entrance was sick.
So sick. And then Mortis appearing. Basically the reptile.
Yeah.
It was at the time, it was nothing like I had ever seen. It was dark and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And like his in-ring work, going back to it, was fucking phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And like Will said, always a great competitor. Never really had a bad match unless the person that he was in the ring with sucked.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a lot of WCW Saturday Night.
Mm-hmm.
So much. Like, yes, when Nitro came on board, it was there. And
Right.
I watched it, of course. And I mean, I was always a WCW guy over WWE. But, of course, it's looking back in hindsight, because as a kid, I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together and, realizing that, okay, that gimmick didn't work. So now they're trying something new with the same person.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I remember Men at Work and on WCW and the construction and the measuring the ring and measuring things just to measure things. And always thinking, I was like, well, that dude's good. That guy, I enjoyed watching him. But then Mortis came out, and again, at that point I'm 10 and everything, but I hadn't put together. And again, pre-internet, didn't realize, you know, hey, that's the dude that was in a construction hat on WCW Saturday Night. But Mortis and the whole Mortal Kombat little stuff that they were doing, and they did it on Thunder a lot, which really fit because they had that dark set of the rock, the original Thunder with the rock set as they came through, and Glacier's snowy entrance and the darkness of it. It made an impact because it was so different. Let's talk a little bit just before we continue on with Kanyon. Like, it's mentioned in Dark Side of the Ring that the NWO is what killed that, because here we go from character-ish wrestling to now the most extreme reality-based wrestling we've ever had.
Right.
NWO doesn't happen. What happens to this Mortal Kombat type storyline and characters, in y'all's opinion?
Mortis would have been world champion.
You would have definitely those gimmick-based characters, your Mortises, your Glaciers, the WCW version of what WWE was doing, where everybody had a job. You had your garbage man and your repo man and your dentist. WCW was doing these almost like comic book style video game characters. And had the NWO not gotten over, if Hogan wasn't the person and they'd thrown somebody else in his place and it didn't become the monster that it was, I think WCW would have pushed these guys even harder because it was going so well up until that point.
Yeah. Can you imagine the toys and the merch they could have made and all that?
God. They would have spawned up. They'd have been doing movies. They would have been doing like the WWE does with the like their own movies.
Yeah.
They would have totally done a series with Mortis, Glacier, Wrath, that whole section of the roster. They would have totally done like spin-off movies with them.
And why not? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
It's a money-making machine, something like that.
The same kids that were watching Hogan's cartoon in the 80s would be watching this as teenagers in that mid-90s. And that's why it would have gotten over so hard, is because like, think about like a 13, 14-year-old kid watching pro wrestlers and Mortal Kombat combined together. They're body slamming, and then they've got fatalities because it's a cartoon, so they can do whatever the hell they want to, right?
Oh, yeah.
I just picture like WrestleMania, the arcade game, but then fatalities.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like,
if the NWO never happened, they'd be printing money with that.
Yeah. I agree with that. Well, that lasted until the NWO came on board and reality-based wrestling, and the teenage fans, including myself, realized that, you know, hey, this is cooler. This feels real. This feels violent. This feels in our face, and we're not sure if it's actually scripted or not. But hey, we're gonna roll with it and see what the hell happens. So, Mortis and Glacier and Wrath and that whole kind of, you know, comic book, video game like characters, they're gone, and so it's an interesting way that we kind of get rid of Mortis. Mortis is around and everything, but he keeps kind of popping up and attacking Raven and the Flock. And I think it's a perfect way of utilizing that, because Raven and the Flock are a reality-based kind of, you know, character-y wrestler compared to like the reality of a Scott Hall, a Kevin Nash. And through this feud with Raven, the mask comes off. I think it was perfect. I think to me the Raven, the Saturn, the Kanyon storyline, it's one of my favorite things WCW ever did, because I really enjoyed he's attacking Raven. All right, Saturn has to defend Raven and the Flock. It turns, Kanyon is now a part of the Flock. What do you guys remember about this time of the mask coming off and we start to get this feud with Raven? And this is post ECW Raven. This is WCW Raven, which same character, same look, totally different type of presentation.
Yeah, it was the pretty much the same character with just it was more money behind it. And obviously, he's not crucifying somebody on Nitro. Like, can't really do that. But as like a big ECW fan, like I was always enamored with Raven. So anything that man's doing, it's got my attention. And also being a fan of Mortis, like seeing him come into this storyline it ticked all the boxes for me at that time. And then with him unmasking and everything, it was like a perfect evolution of the character, like with the storyline, without completely like just like smash cut, like, hey, I was doing this. No, not anymore.
Yeah.
It was like a perfect evolution and it made sense.
I agree with that. Will, what about you?
I liked at this point in WCW's history, when you watched Nitro and you watched Thunder, it had two very different feels. This was right before, you're looking at that 98, but right before the 98 range, because when you get in 98, that's when the official brand split started to happen.
Right.
Prior to that, they had two very distinct feels with their TV programs. You had that larger than life rock star Nitro, and then you had the very punk rock grunge indie wrestling feel that Thunder was. And they put a lot of this Raven Kanyon stuff on that Thunder side of things. And they made it kind of grungy because they brought in what little bit of ECW they could into it while still being a WCW product. So it was very, if WCW had the Nitro and the NWO on one side of the coin, they had these very real wrestling storylines on the other. And that was a very big focal point because Chris Kanyon was kind of on that side of it. He wasn't one of those larger than life superstar NWO kind of people. But like I said, he was still very much a very vital piece of that mid card. Somebody has to be the main event of a house show. And who better than Kanyon, right?
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the reveal from Mortis that Mortis is the one attacking him, because at this time, Raven had all those Riot Squad members with him. And so they're all in black helmet with black masks that you can't see the face. And I mean, it's every week you're like, where's Mortis going to come from? And my favorite one was always the Riot coming out from underneath the Riot Squad gear. And I think if you're going to present this new character, we talk about who better than Kanyon. Who better to put him in the ring than, again, on my list of somebody that should be, to this day, a legend in the business, Mr. Perry Saturn. Somebody that literally people should literally should be in the Hall of Fame, should have been with the company for once they moved over to WWE with that company forever, and unfortunately was not. But who better than to put Kanyon and establish the Kanyon character, the Kanyon brand, than Perry Saturn, who was starting to gain major ground, because you had the fans like us who were watching ECW and remember him in the tag team, who had been on WWF tag team with the Eliminators. Now he's into WCW here, and has been making the rounds, as with the Flock and with Raven, and being a friend of Raven's past and things like that. So I mean, to me, why not? It's to me, it's like putting Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero together. It's like what those two can go together at any time for a match or a rivalry, and it'll be fresh and new each and every single time. And I think to start the evolution of the character of Kanyon, Perry Saturn, perfect choice.
Absolutely, without question. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Perry Saturn has the best elbow drop in professional wrestling. Don't care. But the two of those those two together always made gold. Yeah. Always. Perry Saturn is another one that was a guy that never won a major title that should have. I would have killed to see Perry Saturn with that OG IC title.
Oh,
that would have been dope.
Just saying. Kanyon too. Kanyon would look real good with that OG IC title.
I've used this analogy a lot when it talks about people like your Perry Saturns, your Dean Malenkos, your Chris Kanyons, is that when you see somebody perform like Metallica and you see them on a 12-show tour, they're going to put on 12 banger shows, but every night it's pretty much going to be the same show every night. That's your Roman Reigns. That's your Brock Lesnar's. That's your Cody Rhodes. You get generally the same show every time, but it's going to be great no matter what. Your Perry Saturns, your Dean Malenkos, your Chris Kanyons, that's your Fish, that's your Grateful Deads. You're going to see a totally different show every time you see those men step in the ring. And that's what makes them different. In pro wrestling, different doesn't mean wrong. But you have to have that larger than life character. And that's where your Romans and your Brocks and your Codys and your Hogans, that's where they all have that advantage, because they were those larger than life characters that some of these other guys just never got.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, one thing as we transition into the actual Kanyon character, 3 things that always stuck out to me. 1, the innovator of offense. Killer nickname.
Oh, yeah.
And Will, I know you said this off air and everything. What did they say that Chris was doing on Dark Side of the Ring before anybody else?
He was innovating that indie style before anybody realized it was that indie style.
Yep.
I don't want to call it that flippy dippy because it's starting to work its way into my heart. But that when we say that independent wrestling style, that's what Chris Kanyon was doing 25 years ago.
Yeah. So we had the innovator of violence, so killer nickname, on top of the fact that it's true. His movesets were killer.
Unlike anything in WCW at the time.
Yeah. Which part of that is the finish, the flatliner, which again, killer name. Awesome name for a finish, and it looked cool. And then this is a personal thing, but I, to this day, dug his gear with Kanyon down the side of the leg, written out in bones. It was killer to me. The whole presentation. You talk about the evolution from Mortis to Kanyon. The look and everything, with the same color scheme, was again perfect evolution that we go from Mortis into Kanyon. And I think Kanyon really got that. He's like, Kanyon is a different role that I'm playing, but Kanyon is Mortis. And I'm expanding upon that. Like, Mortis was the prequel. I'm the feature film now. Best way I can put it. Do you guys, while we're in this, before we go into the next kind of shift in Kanyon's career, height prime of Kanyon as Kanyon, what are some of your favorite matchups? What were you guys remembering during this time as Kanyon?
I think sorry, I'll head off. I went out of order this time.
No, go right ahead.
I think one of the biggest things to take away from Kanyon at this point in his career was, without him stylistically, and it wasn't a matter of opponents or feuds or the things he was working through. It was that he was that medium big man, but he was also that medium big man that could move and could fly and could be a technician and could lock up, and he had timing. The one thing he was always lacking was his mouthpiece, but we'll get to the manager. You know what I mean? But stylistically, without him through this period getting over, it showed people who eventually became like your Damian Priests and your Brian Cages and your Lance Archers, that showed that people like that can work, because Chris Kanyon was able to do it at that point. And that's what he was successful in doing through this period in his career. That's my biggest takeaway on that late 90s push with Kanyon, is that he was stylistically ahead of his time, because there weren't any of those other medium big men that were working like that, no matter who he was in the ring with.
He kind of created a whole you had your luchadors and your cruiserweights that were doing that, you had your legends and main eventers, the Goldbergs, the Stings, the Hogans, they're going to be there. They're going to draw ratings. They might have a 5-minute match total, or just a segment, not really a match on TV. But Kanyon was a big part, like a Perry Saturn, that was that medium-sized man that could dive and do some stuff with some cruiserweights. He could do some stuff with some technicians. So he kind of was a big part of carving a niche for himself.
Can I ask you guys a question off the riff? Like, go off script for a second?
Yeah.
Go.
Do you think Chris Kanyon was Kenny Omega before it was cool? Because Kenny Omega is the same thing. He's kind of that medium build. He can fly. He's a technician. He's got speed. He can get over with the crowd, but he's not the world's best talker. He's been really successful with a mouthpiece like a Don Callis or somebody like that. Is Kenny Omega just this generation's Chris Kanyon?
I've never had it put that way before, but that makes so much sense.
Why are you gonna have to make me like Kenny Omega now?
I'm already a Kenny Omega fan, that just blew my mind.
But now I'm like, I've never thought of it that way. But oh my God, just blew my mind, Will.
Dude,
you're welcome, guys. That's why you have me here. Let's be honest, because everybody gets one. You know what I mean? So you're like, there's a chance Will might lay it down tonight. We may as well have him on. And boom, there it was. I got one. So I'm good for another couple weeks now.
He's like, cool. This will be the part that DadHat will clip and put on TikTok and stuff. Cool.
That's cool. All I need is one a week. That's it.
Yeah, I win. Gosh, now I'm gonna have to. How do you got my mind going with like certain?
Well, I was listening to you guys talk, and I was like, DadHat's describing Kenny Omega right now. Like, if you took us out of context, away from Chris Kanyon, like everything you were saying, I was like, that could be Kenny Omega. And then I was like, is fucking Kenny Omega just the 2023 version of Chris Kanyon?
Like, if you just take the character portions out of it and just the in-ring work, it's
fucking
basically
close.
the same prototype. We have a Jay in here.
Jay.
You don't even have to take the character part out of it, because the Mortis thing, that's the Golden Lovers part of Omega's career, as it, like, everything lines up almost exactly.
This is so creepy. Yeah, this is gonna be like,
whoa.
I'm gonna be like trying to go to sleep tonight, and I'm just gonna be like,
I'm gonna get a text at like 2 a.m. It's gonna be like, damn it, Will. Damn it, Will.
I was trying to go to sleep.
You are going to get a message from me on Instagram at 5 a.m. Like,
I'm still thinking about this.
Son of a bitch. I've been awake all night. I built a crazy wall in my fucking room.
There's like strings connecting, but Omega wrestled Jericho, and Kanyon also wrestled Jericho.
Wrestled Jericho, and how did David Bowie become scared of Americans? Like just go completely batshit with it.
Oh, side note, speaking of David Bowie and Chris Jericho just got a David Bowie tattoo.
Hell yeah, he did.
On his top of his shoulder. Like, Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie. I'm like, your tattoos all look badass, but they are the most random mixture of Friday the 13th Jason mask, Canada, and rock stars.
I have the most random tattoos. That's another conversation for another day. But I can rival anybody with random tattoos.
When you sent me a picture of one, I was like, "Is that a spoon?
Is that a spoon?"
I have a wooden spoon.
Yeah. Nice. So anyway, as we go past Kitty, actually now I'm saying Kitty Omega. Damn you, Will. As we go past 98 and start to get towards the tail end of 98, we get to me and into 99, one of my favorite groups that doesn't get enough love, and that's going to be the Jersey Triad: Chris Kanyon, Diamond Dallas Page, and again, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, the Beast from the East, Bam Bam Bigelow. Now, I will say,
of all time.
Yes, my favorite big man of all time. Like, I love Vader, but Bam Bam is always my number one. And I like it because, to me, this was the only real thing in WCW that I enjoyed Bam Bam doing. Like, I enjoyed him being that enforcer, that beast that he was for this group. Because you had, to me, you kind of had a perfect group here with what each one's role was. You had the main eventer in DDP. You had the worker, but also could kind of play the snivelly kind of like, you know, heel that's could whine and run away. And then you have the enforcer and Bam Bam. And it was a cool group. And it makes total sense to call them the Jersey Triad.
It was perfect. It was perfect in every way.
Will, what do you remember about the Jersey Triad and this group of three?
I love Bam Bam Bigelow. Pretty much anything that man ever did. I'm not the Jersey Triad for some reason, like, wasn't one of the big things in my notes. I didn't have a lot written down about it, or anything in my notes about the Jersey Triad. But remembering the group, what I do remember is it was like the Deadly Alliance. Like, you look at the members that create it and you're like, why the fuck wasn't this a bigger deal than it was? But then again, you know, like, it's kind of like your Rocky Horror Picture shows. It's like a cult classic. People look at it now and they're like, oh yeah, you remember Kanyon and Bigelow. And then you're like, why wasn't that a bigger deal? You know what I mean?
I think to answer your question why it wasn't, this was really the first time we were getting DDP as a heel. And I don't know if the audience ever really wanted DDP as a heel. Like, he's a good heel. And we talked about that a little bit last week, like how his role in Ready to Rumble, because people got to see him as a heel. But like, I don't think in the main, not a movie, but here watching pro wrestling every week, he was the people's champion and they did not want him to be a heel. I think that's the big reason why it didn't succeed.
He was too homegrown to be a heel. It almost seemed like when he was fake, people knew when he was being a bad guy, it was like, okay, we know you're just kind of faking it. Shut up. We're going to cheer for you anyways.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, because he started out as a heel. Like in the early 90s when he was like feuding with Johnny B. Bad. Feuding with Johnny B. Bad, and he was managing Scott Hall. Like, he had that, but then he got so over as a babyface that, like, I think it was when he hit the diamond cutter on Nash when he was going to join the NWO.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what made
that set him off. And he became the people's champ. And yeah, like you said, like, seeing him turn heel, people did not want it.
No.
So it's like when they tried to push Roman Reigns as a babyface for all those years.
For 9 straight fucking years.
He didn't want that shit. I'm like,
I could go off on a whole tangent on that. Husky's like, I'm gonna just say the right thing to make DadHat pissed off and go down a tangent, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna buy the bait. But yeah, the Jersey Triad. This is that weird time, 99 if I'm not mistaken, pre-Russo, but a lot of the fans had really started to turn that channel and maybe stick to the other channel just a little bit.
Yeah, it was the tail end of Bischoff before Russo came in.
But one part of this, and I think a big reason we kind of got the Jersey Triad as well is, and I love the combination of Diamond Dallas Page and Kanyon. I always thought that they were perfect, and we'll talk a little bit about their later years together. But this is the time we covered it last week, Ready to Rumble, the movie, in my opinion, the best wrestling movie ever.
Love that movie.
I just read Jay's comment in the chat, and it came full circle.
Yeah.
Omega's first title win was a promotion in New Jersey. Boom.
Oh, my God.
Full circle.
Oh, my gosh.
What is happening?
Seriously. Tomorrow, like, I'm going to be taking a break from work, and I'm just going to get a text from Husky, and he's just going to be like, I can't stop thinking about it.
I had to call off work. I can't deal with this.
He's like, I'm going down the DadHat route. I got notebooks upon notebooks.
Omega held the U.S. heavyweight title 254 days. Kanyon used the U.S. heavyweight title in WCW for 254 days.
They're the same person.
Oh, God. Will is still with the mind blowing. That's I'm not.
Sorry,
again,
DadHat. It is your show.
No, you're fine. It's gonna no, it's fine. No, it's our show, and
I'm just here to derail shit.
I'm just again. I'm trying to let this compute. My mind was not ready for that information.
It happened to me, so I had to make it happen to you guys.
That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, so Husky, you were not on the Ready to Rumble episode. What are your memories and the reason we have to bring you up, since we're talking about Kanyon, is Kanyon was the stunt double for the main character, the actor Oliver Platt, for Jimmy the King. Which I still hate that they never got him to actually make an appearance on the Nitro or something, or at that damn Triple Cage match at Slamboree.
Seriously.
But what are your memories of the movie Ready to Rumble when it first came out, or when you first saw it?
Top 5, dead or alive. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
love that movie to death. Starring the greatest WCW champion of all time, David Arquette. And all the awesome cameos in it. You had DDP, Sting, Goldberg. My mind is drawing a blank.
Perry
Who
Saturn,
else
Raven.
Perry Saturn.
Everybody was.
Here's a name for you. Probably hadn't thought about in years. Prince Iakea.
Oh
yeah.
Prince Iakea. I actually heard that name recently. I've been watching a lot of OSW review.
Oh yeah.
And they've been doing. Then they did like a whole thing of like mid-90s WCW pay-per-views. They did
his whole career happened because he almost looked like The Rock.
he was Wish.com Rocky Maivia. Oh yeah, but Ready to Rumble. I mean, it is the best wrestling movie that's been released to date. It's so fucking hilarious. It's such a good movie. And yeah, I didn't know until before we started recording that Kanyon did a lot of the production of that.
Damn,
Kanyon wrestled the 1, 2, 3.
No. Can you put that on the screen? Because you can't. I mean, you can't do the math.
Yeah.
Can you put that on the screen, Jay?
Put that on the screen.
It's the private chat. I don't know if you can.
Oh my god, I read
Put
it.
it on Post-it notes.
You and I read it
Put
at the exact same time because we both busted out laughing as it happened.
So Jay, and this is why I love Jay, with our Chris Kanyon, Kenny Omega, they are the same person. Chris Kanyon wrestled the 1, 2, 3 kid, and in math, parentheses 1 + 2. Is that what, squared?
No, equals 3.
Times
3 is 9.
Times 3 is 9. And Kenny Omega wrestled a 9-year-old kid. The 1, 2, 3 kid, and then the 9-year-old kid. Oh my!
It all links together.
Damn you, Jay.
Everything about this.
Oh God!
You did this.
I own this. This is my fault. This is no. I wish you guys walked into it, and I was like, you know what? I think I just need to. If I'm struggling here, you guys have to struggle too.
Like Will is gonna. This is slowly gonna be a new series on Will's TikTok of like how many things he can figure out or make these two wrestlers the exact same person.
I'm not allowed to come up with conspiracy theories on my show, so over here I'm just gonna be like, I've got this theory.
I'm okay with
theory.
I'm okay with
tinfoil hat corner.
Unless she's
that's what I'll do. I'll keep a tinfoil hat, and every week I can put it on and be like, "This is my tinfoil hat."
Guys, I got another one, guys.
Unless she comes on as like in the guest host chair, Allison won't be here to yell at you for your conspiracy theories. I love you, Allison. So we got Chris Kanyon in Ready to Rumble, and I mean, I will say this: if you don't even have to look that hard in the match scenes to realize that's not Oliver Platt. That's Chris Kanyon.
No, completely different build.
Yeah, like the part where he gets tossed over and onto the table. I'm like, "What up, Chris Kanyon?" Like it's so clear. It's so clear as day. But he also was kind of in charge of all the wrestling scenes. He was like a producer on it. Like he was able to like really piece together those scenes and help kind of make that part of the movie, which is a big part of it, move along. It was his idea to bring the Triple Cage in and use it as a match, from what I was reading in my research.
Oh,
he was the one that said, "Hey, We have this gimmick from the movie. Why not use it in the pay-per-view?
It's like,
And
why
yes,
not? It's already built.
And hey, we got two triple cages, but that's, again, you can go back. I will say you can't go back yet. We're going to try to upload the previous episodes onto our YouTube channel here. But we did discuss it. You did not see it. But yeah, so let's move past Ready to Rumble because we talked about that on another show. But after this, we kind of get, a little bit different of a Kanyon. He's Hollywood now. He's been rubbing elbows with the big wigs, aka David Arquette and Courtney Cox Arquette and some others, and he comes back and he's Chris Champagne Kanyon, and we get some, again, we talked about it last week, some legendary matches that we remember, aka the Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. Yes. Which, shout out to Ethan from On the Forklift podcast and all the boys over there. Check them out over on Twitch. They do some good work. I always enjoy their podcasts and enjoy when Ethan's come on here with us and other podcasts I've worked on. So big shout out to them. But the biggest part of Chris Champagne Kanyon that I remember is kind of more from Champagne Kanyon into Positively Kanyon when he was feuding with Diamond Dallas Page. He dyed his hair blonde and was diamond cutting everybody backstage, including my buddy here, Mr. Mean Gene Okerlund.
That turned him into the biggest heel in wrestling for me. He put his hands on Mean Gene.
Yeah.
It's like that's a cardinal sin, brother.
It's like touching the Fink, man. You just don't do it. You don't go after somebody's goalie. You don't go after Mean Gene Okerlund.
Exactly, man.
And really, is that the first time he's really been?
I think so.
Out.
I think that's the first time he's ever been attacked by a wrestler before.
I mean, he always would Macho Man would kind of threaten him, and he'd be like, "Hey," like in WWE, like WWF.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think he ever actually got physical. So this is interesting. Chris Champagne Kanyon, a good choice, Will?
I think okay. You and I, there's going to be an episode about this, and it's going to come around. Okay. I think that some of the biggest issues, and I'll say it every week if I have to, we're getting to that point where the biggest issues WCW ever did was whatever the fuck they were smoking, Vince Russo and Bischoff and all the boys were like, you know what? Let's let Kevin Nash book the promotion. And some of this stuff, we start getting eerily close to what it was like when Nash was holding the book. And some of these slapstick caricatures of themselves, we talked about it last week with Arquette, his stuff, how it looked like you pasted together 4 different dudes from 80s wrestling and it became David Arquette. That's kind of what Champagne Kanyon was. He was like a caricature of himself if he was pretending to be a heel.
Yeah. I couldn't hate him. I just laughed.
It wasn't bad, but it was just goofy. Kind of not the best at this point in WCW history. And nothing anybody was putting out was bad quality. It was just bad stories and just kind of yucky booking.
Which is weird because you're getting this goofy kind of character, Husky, but you've got him feuding with one of your, at this point, we're getting that Russo era and everything. And yes, there's some Hogan still there and Goldberg here and there and Sting and everything. But DDP had gotten to this point where he's your top. He's your leader here because he's there each and every week. And even at his age and everything, he's doing and running the show. But you've got a former world champion feuding with this goofy kind of slapstick character. And it's it just doesn't compute. It's like taking Roman Reigns right now and having him feud with the Hurricane.
Right. Yeah.
Which now I want that feud, so take my money.
Anything with the Hurricane.
Book Shane Helms, brother.
Yeah.
Paul, I know you're listening, Paul. I know he retired or whatever, but book Shane Helms versus Roman Reigns. Do it at one of the Saudi shows. Fuck it. Who cares?
Is he still backstage producing?
I think so, yeah.
I thought so too. I know he did some of the matches last year that I was a big fan of, and I was like, way to go, Shane Helms. Like, fuck yeah. Jamie Noble was another guy too that was booking like some of these old like cruiserweight WCW, like early WWE, like light heavyweight cruiserweight guys that I liked watching but never became like big stars. Now they're grooming stars to be like, don't suck, do what we did.
Yeah.
Shane Helms, who also, late 90s WCW with 3 count.
Oh, 3 count.
It all comes full circle. We are not doing a full episode on 3 count. If that's your topic tonight, Will.
No, I've been thinking about my topic, and I've got my topic for next week is flawless.
Okay.
You guys just don't even need to throw one in because this is gonna win.
I don't know, man.
This year's pretty good.
This is week 3. Next week will be week 3 of mine winning.
Oh yeah, I've only got 2. You've got 3 wins. I've got 2, right?
1. First episode.
It's technically 2, but we're still waiting on the cruiserweight.
Oh yes. So 2, yes. So up 3-2. Up 3-2.
So this is my chance to break even. I can get back in the race here.
Yeah. Because we will announce what we are doing next week that won the poll. But so we get through this. And really, this is where we're starting to come to the end of WCW. This is where we're starting to get a little bit towards the end. The buyout happens, and we get the invasion. And Kanyon eventually makes his way to World Wrestling Entertainment. And I think one of the coolest things that they do is, and they even say it in Dark Side of the Ring, is they really enjoyed and thought what Chris Kanyon was doing was something that they could build upon and had faith in him. I mean, he was a double champion. He was a WCW World Tag Team Champion and a WCW United States Champion in the WWE while they were still considered WCW titles. So
what a weird period.
Yeah, it was a really odd period.
That's one WWE thing that eventually we will have to discuss, I think, because it is WCW, is the invasion. Like that whole thing. That might be one that we take. Okay, we're gonna have 2 weeks off because we have to, be able to talk about it and not vomit on screen.
I was gonna say you're gonna need 2 weeks off to like recover.
Yeah.
Dealing with that. I didn't get a week off when we did the entire fucking uncensored series on the Wrecking Crew podcast.
All right. Oh. If I had known that all of those would have been that bad, I would have been like, sorry. That's why, like, when I think I pitched you was talking to you about my idea for a WCW show, you were like, nope. You were like, nope, no. You didn't say it, but I just, in my mind, I'm thinking he's like, we have done uncensored. I've watched all those uncensored and other random shit. Nope, I'm not talking about this. Nope, I'm not talking about this every week.
There's a lot more good than there is bad.
There is, but the bad's so good to talk about.
I mean, Chamber of Horrors, come on.
So, we've talked about that before. So, Will, let's talk about a little bit. We talked off camera about post WWE Chris Kanyon and what he's doing. Let's let you take over here, and let's talk about post WWE and what could have been.
So one of the things that stuck out to me most about his post WWE career was when I talked to guys, whether they're first out of training or they've been in the industry for 25 or 30 years, I like to ask them, like, what would you do if you could go back on night one? Go back night one, match one. What advice would you give that person? And they're always like, I wish I would have done this, or we could have done that, or remember to give back to the business, or, they always do all these things. And when you hear people talk about Chris Kanyon post WWE, what they start talking about is how he started to give back to the business. He went back, he started training guys. We know him and Brian Cage had a great relationship. There's the story about him going back to Brian's home promotion and being like, I'm not going to go in there and win. Like, I'm going to put you over. The crowd's going to go nuts. Here's how we're going to do it. And it goes in, and he really just pours his heart and soul out into the business to give back to it, without Chris Kanyon and this part of his career, we wouldn't have gotten people like Brian Cage. And one of the most important but polarizing tag teams in the last, 20 years are the Young Bucks. And they are, they came when they got out of their backyards and off their trampolines, they ended up in Chris Kanyon's ring. You know what I mean? Like, he was the closest thing to a wrestling school they ever got into.
And he took a liking to them. He took them under their wings. I will say, if you ever get a chance to read the Young Bucks book, one of the best parts of that entire book is them talking about Chris Kanyon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, Matt Jackson's part on that Dark Side of the Ring, like, talks a lot about his impact and like the relationship that they had, and it's a heartbreaking watch, man.
That is.
We didn't want to talk too much about that side of it because we said Chris, the man's got a Dark Side of the Ring episode dedicated to him. He had his demons. He was going through a lot, and that says to the level of man that he was going through all that personally, and he still gave back to the business until his very last day. Because he wanted to help these guys as much as he could.
Yeah, that's definitely a testament to what kind of man Chris was.
So as we wrap up here, before we get to all the as our boys at Cole TV would say, plug-a-palooza, fantasy booking, if you will, ish. Chris Kanyon is still here today. What's he doing?
Wrestling Kenny Omega in the fucking Tokyo Dome, apparently.
Headlining Wrestle Kingdom against Kenny Omega for the IWGP.
I'm just saying, does he get
wins?
Does he eventually make his way back to WWE? Does he eventually get a world title? Does he, or is it? This is kind of going into the article that you're talking about, Will, that we've talked about, but like, I honestly think that if he was still around, one of the head coaches at the PC.
Yep.
Like, I think that's the perfect spot where he would be and where he would be doing his work.
He would be training somewhere.
Yeah.
He would be one of those world champions that went through around the time of your Guerreros and your Lord Voldemorts and those guys, the working champions. Chris Kanyon could have fit right into that mold around that time too.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't one of those super big, super heavyweight. When I was saying the medium big man, I thought about it. I was like, I don't want some idiot to be like, he's not like Andre. That's not what I mean when I say big man. But what I mean is he's bigger than a middleweight or a cruiserweight. You know what I mean? He's obviously a heavyweight of some kind, but he moves like those light heavyweight guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's why I was like, I want to clarify that because I could hear some idiot later being like, Will compared Kanyon to Andre. And I'd be like, no, that's not what the fuck I said.
No. You didn't see Andre doing topes, brother.
Yeah.
Not happening.
In WWE 2K23, you can.
Yeah, you can.
I've seen it.
That's awesome.
It's terrifying.
Mack truck. Boom. So that kind of wraps up Chris Kanyon. So let's get to a little bit of business. Next week, the poll has spoken, and again, I won. So we are going to be talking about the relationship in WCW between one of the all-time greats, Eddie Guerrero, a.k.a. Uncle Eddie, and Chavo Guerrero Jr., which means we get to talk about Pepe.
Pepe.
And I cannot wait for that. So let's throw out what we're going to throw on the poll for the week after that. You want me to go first, or you want to go first with your?
You go first. You're the reigning and defending champion.
All right.
Rub it in a little bit harder for me.
Yeah. I mean, I can. I can't really say in a row because yours won, but we just put it on hold. So I can't.
It's on the back burner.
Yeah, we're waiting. So mine is going to be one that I am super excited to talk about. And I'm kind of glad that Husky's here so I can get an impression. Because that's what I always think about Husky, is him and his amazing impressions.
Oh, boy.
And that's going to be, we're going to talk about, because there's a lot in WCW we could talk about this person, but I want to talk specifically about the years we got the blonde-haired, black-haired, goatee, big bad booty daddy himself, Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner.
Yeah, son of a bitch.
And he knew where I was going with it. So
Yes.
Big Papa Pump years from the turn on his brother at Super Brawl 99.
Yeah.
99.
99.
99. Yes. Same one as Jericho Juventud Guerrera mask coming off. So Super Brawl 99 through the last Nitro, where he lost his world title to Booker T. Will, going up against Big Papa Pump.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna see. Listening to that, okay, I'll give you that. That's a fantastic topic. Next week, however, I want to talk about the managers. Can I speak to your manager, please? I want to talk about your Jim Cornettes, your Paul Heymans, your Bobby the Brain Heenans. I want to talk about the fantastic managers that went through WCW that eventually became some of the best managers to ever do it.
That's going to win.
That's a good one, dude.
Because you got a lot of ground to cover. And all I'm going to say is I'm glad I'm not going to have to do a lot of the research on that one. That's a lot of fucking research.
Man, I mean, dude, they were heavy hitters.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. And they all held the book. They were all bookers and promoters at one point. They all went on to change wrestling in so many ways.
Yeah,
they're
Jim
all
Cornette, Bobby
1, 2, and
Heenan,
3
Jimmy
managers
Hart.
of all times.
Yeah, that's
Paul Heyman.
Hey, you could even, I mean, if you really wanted to, you can go into, you know, oh my God, I'm not really going to say this. I'm not putting them on the same level as this. You could do Medusa and Miss Madness and Gorgeous George even.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like the managers that were in WCW were ridiculous. Because you think about a young Paul Heyman, a Jim Cornette at the peak of his prime, and then the Heenan family, like going into what would become like the end of it in that mid-90s push before, you know what I'm talking about. Like they had 3 of the absolute greatest minds in wrestling all under one roof at one point.
Oh, yeah.
And
also one to add in, tying in to Chris Kanyon, Father James Mitchell.
Bingo. There's so many managers. We could use 2 parts for this episode if we chose to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
But just the big 3, just Heenan, Heyman, and Cornette. Just those 3 by themselves.
You could do an entire episode just on them. Absolutely.
Yeah. Believe me. And the funny thing is, from our first episode where you were like, "You son of a bitch," when I threw out
the David Arquette stuff.
Yes, I was real close to saying my choice would have been the Dangerous Alliance. I was real close. But
that's also a good one.
Yeah.
Very
So
good.
okay, so next week we cover Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero. The poll, once this drops, I will post the poll for the following week. So that way every week we announce what we're going to do. Before we get into what what Will and I have to plug, Husky, plug your shit, man. Oh, first of all, I'm going to plug something for Husky. Husky, along with friend of the show, the Silverback Nate Slater, have a show here on the World Championship Wreckage YouTube. Episode 1 dropped today, and the title of that is called Icon, where Husky and Nate Slater every week are going to be touching on something from the legendary WCW career of the Icon Sting. And this week, with Husky going first, he's touching on the career feud that defined the career of Sting. Some people say Vader, some people say Cactus Jack, some people say, Hogan. Just like Husky says, in his mind as well as mine, the main feud for Sting is and will always be the Nature Boy Ric Flair. So he dives into some of the
Got it.
Nailed it.
Boom. Young Sting right there too. So we have got that dropping. Husky, where else can they find you before we promote other stuff? And also plug your music, man.
Oh yeah, dude. You can catch me every now and again on Ye Old Clock app. You can find me at HuskyRhodes 912. if you want to know what I'm listening to while I'm throwing weights around at the gym at 5:30 in the morning, you can follow me on Instagram at HuskyRhodes. I make beats under the name Dormir. That's Dormir. It's the French word for sleep, if you were wondering. And
which is featured in the first episode of Icon.
Yes. And my song Cold World is featured in the first episode of Icon. I have some other music projects. I'm putting out a synthwave record because I got bored and decided I wanted to make some synthwave stuff. So that's coming soon. It'll be under the Dormir name. I got like 3 or 4 more tracks to finish, and I'm gonna be putting that out. I have like a heavy music project that I'm slowly working on. Don't have a name for that yet, but stay tuned for that. And Wrecking Crew podcast will be coming back soon. I'm just plotting out some stuff on that. And thanks again for having me, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you as always, Husky. Will, what's going on at Rivet City Radio and Botch Spots and Share Shots coming up?
Guys, Botch Spots and Share Shots is a ton of fun right now. We've got a ton of cool interviews dropping. We're covering a lot of NWA stuff. So we've got the guys from the Now, which is Hell Collins and Vic Delicious. We've got the Thrillbilly Silas Young. We've got Pollo Del Mar. We've got who did I just book today? Tons of NWA guys coming down the pipe. We've got a former X Division champion coming down the pipe. We've got a former King of the Deathmatch coming down the pipe. So search for me. Find me anywhere you do anything on the internet at Botch Spots and Share Shots, botchspotsandShareshots.com. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so there's a couple things I'm going to plug. Of course, one, everything social media. Social media? Wow. I don't know
social media.
Southern came out even more than it already does. Damn you being from the South. All my entire life. But anyway, I am DadHat Wrestling everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. It's all Clapper. It's all DadHat Wrestling. But for World Championship Wreckage, we have a Twitter. We also have a TikTok. Search World Championship Wreckage. Twitter is at WC Wreckage Pod, and it's just World Championship Wreckage on TikTok. Both places is where we put the polls and where you can vote. You can vote either place, and that way we want to make sure that you guys are the deciding factor. Will and I just throw up the topics. It's up to you as viewers to decide what we are actually going to talk about. So please follow, retweet, help us spread the word. Thank you to everybody who has followed us for our first kind of going into a first official week here on YouTube. We already have 20 followers, which to me is kind of amazing all to its own, just because I didn't know what would happen doing an independent, kind of little YouTube channel onto its own. And I'm excited about where we go, but there's more stuff coming down the line for World Championship Wreckage coming soon. And you guys are going to kind of be the first to kind of hear about this, featuring friends of the show from Cole TV. First off, Mr. B-Roll, everyone's favorite wrestling newbie, is going to have FWN Reacts, where he reacts to WCW things for the very first time. Someone who has never seen a lot of WCW, he is going to react to storylines and
what a nerd
matches and promos and everything for the first time. Also, our friends from Cole TV, XLJ the OG, is going to be coming on with Back in the Day. He has a case full of old WCW magazines and Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and he's going to be taking some deep dives into those WCW magazines and see what they were writing about back in the day for those. Also coming down the line, enter this friend of the show and also co-host, I should say, of the Wrestle Talk Wolfpack, twitch.tv/Wrestle Talk Wolfpack, going live for the first time on Twitch on our own channel this coming Wednesday. Friend of the show, Bree Stout, enter this, where she is going to review the wonderful entrance themes that were WCW.
Oh, nice.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So I have to see how that's going to work and make sure we don't get sued, because I'm sure some of that stuff is copyrighted. But that's something I'm going to talk to Will, because Will is my person that I go to for everything in terms of what you can and can't do without getting sued. So he's my go-to person for that.
I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to ask Al, and I'm going to be like, hey, are we going to get sued for this? And she's going to go yes, or she's going to go no. And then I'll be like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Then we'll ask Allison. Thanks, Allison. And then there's some other stuff coming down the lines. There might be someone else coming to kind of tie in WCW to, what I would consider WCW 2.0, the early days of TNA. We might have something coming down the line.
Ooh.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Something that just got discussed today that might be coming down the line, and I won't say who it is yet because he's committed, but we're again haven't put pen to paper. Not that we have pen to paper on anything anyway, but just he's marinating on exactly what it might fully look like. But possibly a show coming down the line of maybe some wrestlers that you forgot about in WCW. Ones that, or you remember them, but you just don't remember much about them because other things were taking up TV time, like your Lash LaRue's, your early AJ Styles, your Lodies, your Sick Boys, things like that. Wrestlers that, again, were there and you remember them, but you don't remember much about them or their matches that made impact and were a big part of WCW. So there's some cool stuff coming down the line. Who knows? I try to go to bed tonight, and I'll probably think of 5 other ideas and have to write them down because that's what my brain does. But next week here on YouTube, it is going to be the Will Gray, myself, and who knows who's going to be in that guest chair. We're going to discuss Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero in WCW. Before we go, I'll let everybody sign off. Husky, thank you again. I appreciate you stopping by.
Of course, man.
Will, as always, man, I appreciate you each and every week being here with me and talking all things WCW. And I'm glad. I'd love to see that you're relaxed and you're like, I don't have to produce shit. I can just be here.
I got notes. I had notes written down. I was ready. I was ready to talk. Boom.
Well, folks, for the HuskyRhodes, for the Will Gray, I am your friendly DadHat wearing wrestling fan saying next week, we lie, we cheat, we steal. Talking Eddie and Chavo Guerrero. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.